Welcome to the Navigator podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Navigate Academy, Module 15, Project Estimation and Pricing. With me today is Joel Harris. Joel is an experienced executive across multiple industries with extensive experience leading, building, and growing low voltage companies from audiovisual to security to structured cabling to specialty healthcare, whether it be patient education or nurse call. Joel has served as COO and COO roles for the past 20 years in these types of companies, and in this role has led multiple successful acquisitions ranging from small companies to large strategic ventures. Joel is currently serving as the fractional COO for HB Communication and principal consultant for Navigate Management Consulting. And I know, Joel, you're adding a richness and a strategic just acumen to our customers, which is already really positively impacting them. So in your experience, what are the common challenges companies face when it comes to labor estimating and pricing?
Thanks, Brad. First, let me just say glad to be part of the Navigate team. And
Appreciate it.
With regards to estimating and pricing, I see 5 common problems across most of our companies. First is we don't get the scope of work right. It's impossible to get an estimate right if the scope of work is not right. And your estimate will be wrong if you're not estimating to what you're promising your customer. The second one is a lot of companies get stuck on one method of estimating. When I took my construction management course as part of my civil engineering degree, we were always taught to estimate using 3 different triangulations, right? First, you use the standards the industry has. And those standards are right as long as everything that went into that standard is true about your project, and they rarely are. So you have to add in a lot of factors around the standards to get to the right estimate. They are a great starting point, but they should not be your only way to estimate. Ratios of equipment to labor is another good estimating technique. I've used it everywhere from construction of gas stations to building out specialized pharmaceutical equipment. It's in most industries, there's a pretty known ratio, but that applies to the large pool of common projects, not to every specialized project. Especially in small projects, your ratios are going to be very different. And in highly complex projects, those ratios are going to be different. So you have to know when to apply that. The best estimating method, which again, not exclusive, is to gather the information from the people who actually do the work. This is an old Peter Drucker principle. Go ask the people who actually do the work. And if you ask your install manager what it takes to do the install, they'll give you the best estimate of what it really does. Programming, engineering, just go down the line. The problem is technical people tend to be conservative. And so you can quickly pad your estimate too much by everybody putting just a little bit extra in to make sure that they're covered. So then you need to make sure that it's balanced with these other estimating mechanisms to make sure that you're not trying to estimate too conservatively. And for the best run companies, this is where the PM process actually starts. Why not have your PMs go gather the estimates from the functions as opposed to have your salesperson or some engineer run around like a chicken with their head cut off trying to get these estimates? All 3 have to be used. They generally align, and when they don't, go investigate a little further. Make sure your estimates are right. And the third issue I see is not relying on a single function. Too many companies want this estimating to be done by a single function or a single person. And then now all of a sudden, whatever errors that person has built kind of over time, they just keep getting replicated time and time again. And so we think we're getting speed and efficiency out of a single function estimating, but we risk the richness of multiple eyes on the estimating process and multiple points of views. Sometimes it's sales doing the technical estimating and never giving the technical services team a chance to review it, or vice versa. Sales and ops have to work together to provide the right estimate. And then not using past performance to calibrate your estimate. So many times I see the same estimating errors just get replicated time after time after time, as people assume that because I estimated it right the last time, or one time at some point in the past, it must be the right estimate. So we have to let our current work, our current market, our current team inform our estimates to get them correct.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how often or how rarely you see closed loop. It's like going, well, the estimate's right. Well, how do we know? Like again, a stopped watch is correct twice a day, but how do we really close the loop and then learn? Are you a learning organization? And I think that's key. Great.
Closed loop reviews are essential, and we need to do them by including the people who provided the estimate the first time. Now, and again, in a larger organization, I like to have the managers of the functional area provide it, because there's two errors that can go wrong in the estimate. It could be poor performance. You need to measure out your poor performance. You can't just keep adding in increasing your estimate due to poor performance. You have to have somebody who can understand that project. It was poor performance or is misestimating. If it's misestimating, then correct your estimate for the next time you do it, because you can never perform to a low ball estimate, no matter how much you.
No matter what, right?
No
Exactly. What we talked about, the team approach and going to your functional managers. What impact do you see when sales and ops really operate from a siloed perspective? And I'll say sometimes adversarial, although passive, it's sometimes a finger pointing.
So this goes back to the roots of our industry, right? We tend to believe as an industry that sales should sell all they can. No regard to capacity, no regard to whether we have the technical skills and capability to deliver. Just go sell all you can. And whatever you sell, operations can deliver. And that, of course, is a recipe for disaster. Three major things go wrong when that happens. One is we really make unhappy customers. Yeah. And so if our goal is to build a business that's built on repeat customers, we fail right off the bat by throwing customers into a mix that we don't know what the predictive outcome is, because we have the capacity and capability to deliver the sales that are around. We ruin our planned profitability as we try to do too many things at once, and all of a sudden we're playing hide the pea under the shell, and we're moving projects all over, and we just kill our projects. And worse, we kill our people. And so our people work for this really disorganized machine that requires them to be heroes rather than requires them to work productively to this. So when sales and operations don't work together, that sales sells into the capacity we have, and when ops delivers against the planned capacity in a logical, thoughtful way, then we do some really bad things by working against each other.
Right, and I find that a lot of people don't talk capacity. They estimate into a vacuum, and they say this project will take this many hours. And it's like, yeah, but you're sharing resources across. You're also pulling people into service calls in a reactive fashion, which just totally ruins that efficiency of that project. So it's really looking at I'll say the portfolio of projects is how we're going to execute that estimate.
That's right.
And we have to take that into account.
So many companies want well, you can deliver a $100,000 project in 8 weeks. The sales team just want to believe that. And that's true. Depending on the size, you might be able to deliver 10, but 15, 16 against the capacity of 10, it ain't going to happen.
Nope, not going to happen.
Why not have that honest conversation with your customer up front rather than disappointing all 16, because that's what's going to happen.
Exactly. Where do you see the distinction? Because I hear all the time, well, we need to price it to win it. And I'm like, well, okay, that's just going to hurt yourself, versus we need to estimate correctly.
So I see this as a false dichotomy that our industry seems to just hold deeply. And it's built on two false assumptions. Number one, our companies believe that the only value we provide is the cost of our work. And so we end this race to the bottom of who is willing to take the lowest price. We don't value what we actually provide to our customers high enough. So we have got to stop saying that we price it to win it based only on our cost inputs. We price it to win it based on the value we create for our customers. And the companies who understand that get away from this race to the bottom. And the second thing is, for some unknown reason, we think that what other companies do should influence what we do. It makes no sense at all to me that how somebody else's estimate should influence my estimate. I don't know anything about what their capacity is. They could have wide open capacity, and they're just trying to fill a little bit of their fixed costs. I can't win against that.
Okay.
And so estimating should be done as to our best estimate of what it truly costs us to do it, regardless of any influence from the market. And then we will let our sales colleagues figure out what the market will bear and to maximize the value to the customer that then decides the margin. So technical determines the estimate, sales determines the margin, and together you have a winning combination.
Got it. Great. And then we started to talk a little bit about that closed loop conversation. One, I find it often missing, and who needs to be involved in it, and how often do we need to do it?
Well, so the rule of thumb for me is when there's a big miss, right? It should be routine. It should be part. Sometimes you can take your top 3 every month. Sometimes you can take your top 7. To me, it's more about having a discipline of always reviewing it. And then if you need to stratify it because you can't review all your projects, then take the ones with the biggest misses. Those are the ones you need to look at. And then, as I said earlier, bring your functional managers in so they can help, without finger pointing, decide what was poor performance versus what was a misestimate on, we just missed it because we didn't understand something about it. Often our estimating tools grow from our experience. If you missed a scissor lift because you forgot to measure the height of the ceilings, next time you won't forget that and you'll put that in your quotes. So you begin to build your own richness of estimating by learning from what went wrong the last time.
Well, I think it's more than it's absolutely the estimate, but it's more than that. It's like, are we making the correct assumptions? And then are our assumptions actually in our scope of work? So I always look at, we could have a good on estimate, but how many ICOs did we have, or how many ICOs did we not track? In which case we feel our estimate was bloated. It's like, no, guys, we just didn't show the lineage of how we got to where we were. In which case, like, I can't learn from that.
That's right. That's a really great point, Brent.
Yeah. What practices have you seen which create success? And then, can you give us an example of 2 or like going, yeah, these people they rocked, they humped?
So the best practice, which is really hard to adhere to, is for the sales team to not promise a quote until they've given the technical services team adequate time to provide the estimate, for which they can then add the margin to it. Typically, companies try to set some sort of service level agreement around this. Like if you give me a good user-defined scope of work, then I can provide you an estimate within 3 to 5 days, and you can build that. But what happens when you have whatever the ratio is, 5 salesperson to 1 design engineer, and all 5 of them decide that today's the day I got a proposal out to a customer? Your SLAs fall apart, and so then you have to have a mechanism to be able to escalate those and get the proposals out. But don't promise proposals in a vacuum. So it's all about alignment. It's all about coordination. It's all about communication to win with the customers. And then have the estimating team use all 3 methods and let the sales team figure out what the margin and markup is on that. And if your sales team are not doing technical estimates, guess what? It frees them up to go out and do the interviews with their customers and gather market data and figure out what is the competitive environment that I'm truly selling into, rather than just always slapping a 17 or a 19 or a 25 or 35 or whatever number they always slap onto their estimate. No, don't slap a number on it. Go find a reason as to why you can put the margin on it you want. And if you free up your sales team from doing the technical estimates, they have time then to go do market analysis. As an example,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As an example, one of the companies I ran one year, we knew coming into the year that the construction forecasts were robust. And we estimated that our entire industry in that geographical area did not have capacity enough to fulfill all the demand. And so we simply sat and we cherry picked the living daylights out of our market. And we charged a premium price, and about a quarter into the year, all of our competitors were full up of low margin work that they had won through the race to the bottom. And then we were able to charge what we thought was the fair price for our capacity that was limited. And at that time, we averaged 24 points gross margin. That year was exceptional. We generated 28 points on average of gross margin simply by understanding what the market would bear. We didn't change our estimates. Our estimates were the same they always were. But we were able to take a better understanding of what the market was in order to price. And so the coordination between sales and operations and management becomes really effective to driving your profitability. The next year, there wasn't as much demand. Of course, everybody had gone out and hired everybody they could, so there was a lot of capacity, and we went back to our more normal 24 points. But the year that we had 28 points, all four of that just dropped to our bottom line.
Right.
And talk about a massive difference for the income when you coordinate your sales, operations, and management in a company setting.
Well, I think key to that, and you kind of did that by looking at when you say cherry pick, I find that a lot of organizations, they're not qualifying their jobs. They're just throwing things to the tech. And so I'm always looking at what's my win and loss ratio per salesperson per engineer hour. I mean, engineers are our vital resource, and are we, just wasting them? And are we really qualifying? Again, a lot of people have an ideal client worksheet, or they have, a qualification process that we don't follow.
We don't follow.
And therefore we get into this, I promised the client. Well, we don't even want that client. And now we're going to set out, to me, a poorly constructed estimate that, by God, hopefully we don't win.
Right, but we wasted engineering hours putting it together.
Right. And then the worst thing is we win it. So, it's like, well, that was not a good model. So it's really that company perspective and going after the right thing and doing it correctly and doing a feedback loop.
That's exactly right.
Awesome.
Exactly right.
What business book are you reading, and what are you learning from it?
So I've actually returned to an old favorite just this week, and I was rereading the chapter from Vern Harnish's book on scaling up, on the 7 layers of cash flow. And I was reminded that all of strategy should drive those 7 layers. And so if your strategy isn't executing to drive a lever of cash flow, you need to go back and relook at your strategy. So tying strategy to results, as opposed to having strategy be just some idea of goodness that we should attain to. It has to drive business results, and those business results show up in those seven levers. 4 of them around operating. If your strategy should be driving volume increase or growth of your business, it should be driving pricing increases and margin increases. It should be driving effectiveness of your delivery capability. And it should be leveraging your SG&A to increase and be able to deliver more projects with the same back office staff. And then you've got the 3 financial metrics. But That was a good read and a good reminder for me.
Great. Well, and you're kind of presaging our next module, which we're going to have you back for, which is really strategic and operational planning. So thanks for teeing that up. Again, thank you for being a part of Navigate. And for those of you listening, I hope you enjoy this. And again, we'll hear more from Joel because he just adds a richness that I'm really excited about. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Take care.